Hi, this is Girls Who Gab with Habs and Muffy. In this episode, we are going to share some laughs about April Fool's Day. Pranks, jokes, hoaxes? Let's see where it takes us. You never know. Happy April Fool's Day! Hey, Muffy. I thought after, covering some more serious topics like charting your career, which is a serious topic because it follows you throughout much of your life, that maybe we should turn to something a little lighter. And seeing as this episode falls on April 1st and it's a Tuesday, I thought it would be fun to do an episode about April Fool's Day and encompassing more than that. But I'm just going to step back and give a little bit of history. I won't bore anyone, but supposedly, from what I've learned, April Fool's Day has been celebrated for several centuries by different cultures, and its origins are still unknown. I did not know that. It is a day where it's like an annual custom to play practical jokes and hoaxes. Just curious if you and RK are into playing practical jokes or hoaxes, and we will get into that a little bit more. First, I'm just going to read a little blurb about the origins of April Fool's Day as far as we know. It says that some historians speculate that April Fool's dates back to 1582 when France switched from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar as called for by the Council of Trent, whatever that is. In the Julian calendar, as in the Hindu calendar, the new year began with the spring equinox. I can't say that word. Around April 1st. People who were slow to get the news or failed to recognize that the start of the new year had moved to January 1st and continued to celebrate it during the last week of March through April 1st became the butt of jokes and hoaxes, and they were called April Fools. These pranks included having paper fish placed on their backs and being referred to as poisson diable. I'm not a French speaker, so excuse my poor French, but it's the April fish, which is said to symbolize a young, easily caught fish and a gullible person. Well, Muffy, I am a very gullible person. I take things at face value. When somebody makes a joke and it's like subtle and a little bit sarcastic, I don't catch on right away. So I'm very gullible, I have to admit. I've been the butt of many jokes as a result of that. Risotto? Where did that come from? Anyways, I like simple jokes, and just like the silliest of simple jokes really crack me up. So I am not very good at being sarcastic at all. Now, my husband, A, is very good at being sarcastic. And oddly enough, we have friends that live in Northern Ireland, and the British and the English, they can have a definite sarcastic flair. So when we get together with them, my husband A and my friend R, they can be very sarcastic with one another, and they have quite a good wit. It kind of goes right over my head. And so, to be honest, that is why I became to be known as Chrissy Snow in college. Now, don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean that I'm dumb. I don't think I'm dumb. I know I'm not dumb. But it just means that I don't have a quick wit when it comes to those subtle, sarcastic jokes. And I mean, I'm just not as quick to the, the finish line. I get it, but it hits me after. And then I'm always like a little bit embarrassed because I'm like, yeah, I should have gotten that one. You got me there. Anyways, I think about April Fool's Day, and one of my fond memories of my mom, and there weren't a ton, was that she always played an April Fool's joke on me and my family. She was like really good at it. Like one time she put a little plastic black spider in my peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I mean, probably parents will get in trouble if they did that nowadays, but back then it was really funny. Or she'd wake up my dad super early and be like, "You're late for work," and just silly little things. But she really had a flair for playing, just like a little mischievous joke. So I always kind of anticipated it every year. Now, I have not done that with my girls, but now that we're talking about it, maybe I will do it this year. I'll have to think about it. Again, it doesn't come easily for me. I'm a jokester in the moment. Like, I'm funny when I don't realize I'm being funny. My father was very much the same way. If either of us try too hard, we usually are not very funny. But when we don't try, it actually kind of just comes through. It's interesting to reflect that my mom really enjoyed the little pranks. My husband is quite the prankster, not in a bad way, like in a good way. I remember um, when he was at his first job. I mean, he was well respected. He's a quiet guy. He gets the job done. Comes across as very innocent, very naive. So nobody would ever suspect him of doing anything. Well, one time I remember we were cleaning out like just all of our tchotchkes and stuff that we had at home from like he had a silly all Alf calendar. I don't know if you remember that show, Alf. He loved that show. Maybe it wasn't a calendar, but anyways, it was something. And so, like, every once in a while, he would put something silly or some tchotchke that he had that he wanted to get rid of on somebody's desk. And it was always very fitting that it was that particular person he chose. Well, people were buzzing around the office about, like, who do you think did this? Because it happened, like, for a little while because he had quite a few tchotchkes from his childhood as well as through college. And so nobody ever suspected that it was him because they never would have. Isn't that funny? I mean, I don't know if that's a joke or a hoax, but it definitely is like a little sneaky thrill that he likes to do. I remember also, sorry, I just thought of this, but like the night before Halloween, we used to like toilet paper people's houses. Like, you can never do that now. And that was a little bit of a prank, right? And people would throw eggs at people's cars. Now, that got a little too far. But kind of toilet papering somebody's home, like in their trees, it kind of was like an act of like, a little prank. But it also kind of showed like a sign of like, hey, I like you and I'm going to just do this prank. I don't know. I did. Like parents would always get mad, but kids were always happy. It always made me happy to see all the toilet paper all over the place. That is so not PC today and not environmentally friendly at all. But it was just a way of having fun. Well, not going too far, of course. And it's like, I miss those days of just kind of having a little bit of fun on people. You can't do that in the same way. I remember there was a couple that we were friends with out in California, and A did a little prank on them, and boy, did it backfire in a big way, like a really big way. I won't go into the details, but he felt so bad. That was it. The way they interpreted it was not what he intended whatsoever. But it definitely made him like think a little bit like, oh, I better check myself here. I guess like the message of that is you also have to be careful about who you do pranks to and hoaxes because it doesn't always go down well. I too had that experience. I called somebody adorable and wow, somebody took that the wrong way. So, but I miss just, I don't know. I think it's just fun and to have a few jokes and laughs and well, you don't like comedy, but your husband RK is quite the comedian, and so he does like to make jokes, and I don't know if he likes to do hoaxes. I'd be curious to see if he's ever done anything for you on April Fool's Day. I also find it interesting, like I'd be curious, right? Does he have that impish side to him? I know that my daughter Jay likes jokes and will often come at me with various jokes. And then she wants me to tell a joke. And I'm like, I don't know a joke. But her jokes they're so simple and they're just funny, right? Like, and that very, like the purest form of simplicity. I don't know if that makes sense, but it'd be like, why did the chicken cross the road because it liked to whatever. I don't even know that joke. See, I'd be terrible at coming up. I would not be a good comedian. Let me put it that way. But I don't think I would mind playing a good little prank. I can be mischievous that way. A little hoax that, again, is not anything that would be meant to be mean or like unwanted consequences or anything like that, but just to have a little fun, just to make people think, smile, be curious, or maybe even be a little annoyed. Like, who's that? What's going on? So I wouldn't mind a little prank here and there. And again, like in these times, like we need to embrace, we don't need to. I mean, I just think it would be nice that like times in the past few years have been so serious that when there's a funny joke or a funny hoax or prank, like you go with it, enjoy it. I remember, and this is more of a joke or something like along the lines of being silly. I think it's always good to be able to make fun of yourself and make fun of others, but also yourself. And that is my rule. I never make fun of somebody else before I make fun of myself, or I'm never critical of anybody else without being critical of myself. So that is my rule. If I do it to me, then perhaps I can do it to others. Again, good-naturedly, like nothing mean. But if I can't laugh at myself, I can't laugh at others. You know what I mean? So I remember it was a few summers ago. We were in Ocean City, New Jersey with a whole bunch of friends. And we were at the beach. And one of my friends had a sandwich she was holding in her hand. And all of a sudden, the seagull came down and just took it right out of her hand. She's like, oh, and we were like, oh, and then Jay was like, oh my God, there's a bird. And then the bird was swirling around us. And then it felt like the bird was attacking Jay. And then I swooped over to help her. And I felt like the bird was attacking me. Meanwhile, everybody else around the circle is just sitting there quietly looking at us make this spectacle, right? Like it was hysterical. And this finally we run away from the circle and we felt like the bird was following us. Jay's screaming, people are looking at us. And we come back and one of my friend's daughter, who was like taking a nap, she lifts her head up and she's like, what's going on? Everybody laughs. To this day, like everybody tells that story over and over, and it is funny. It wasn't funny to Jay and I, but I mean, I do have to laugh. And my one friend who would have loved to seen this scene, she was not there, and she regrets. She's like, oh, I wish I had been at the beach that day. I wish I hadn't gone back early. So anyways, I think it's kind of fun. I don't know what kind of things that have happened to you that, you find funny or that you can laugh at. But, there's one other story, and I won't go into it too much, but a bunch of us were in Italy, and my friend T, he had this bathroom accident. One night, he told us the whole story of it, and man, was he quite the storyteller. And it was the most hysterical thing. I can't even retell the story, but it was honestly just the funniest story I've ever heard. Which leads me to the fact that, like, even storytelling can be funny, humorous, and, like, great entertainment. Like, remember the movie Out of Africa? Yeah, I know there's controversy around that movie. Really not accurately capturing that whole genre, but nonetheless, I love that movie. And Robert Redford does a lot of storytelling, and he tells these great stories where people cry and they laugh. I think it's similar to storytelling is similar to jokes and pranks and hoaxes. They're all kind of like being creative, like in a way that like television, I mean, which is creative, but like it's not something, it's so much more natural when it just comes from a person directly, and it's not social media, it's not contrived. It just kind of like, it kind of reminds me of like your salon parties where you have people come with either a poem, something what they want to read. It's just like the purest form of enjoyment. So I'm just curious, Muffy, do you have any childhood memories of pranks or jokes on April Fool's Day or any other time throughout your life? And like, just I'd be curious to hear what kind of stories you might have and whether or not you and RK like to crack some jokes. Well, I know RK does, but professionally speaking. Anyways, I always look forward to April Fool's Day, so I think I align more with the Julian calendar versus the Gregorian calendar because I kind of feel like April 1st is the equinox of spring and should be the first of the year, whereas in January it's still cold and nobody's outside and life doesn't really start blooming. So it's an interesting thought. Who knows? I mean, there's always talk about doing away with daylight savings. Maybe we'll change the first of the year to April 1st and not January 1st. Yeah, highly doubtful. But again, one never knows. Hey, Habs, it's Muffy. Happy April Fool's Day. I can tell you really, really enjoy at least the idea of April Fools. And I'm going to ask you if you are actually doing an April Fool's prank on your girls today. I heard that you may in your earlier part to me, and I'm curious if you are what that will be. Yes. Times are so very serious these days, and everything is so politically correct, and everything has to be just so. And I grew up, I was born in, I'm just gonna say it, 1971, I think the same year you were. And, I was definitely a kid of the 70s and 80s, and it just was not politically correct. And it was just free to say things. And yeah, maybe they were inappropriate things, but I like that freedom. I don't know. I don't know why everyone has to take everything so, so serious. I think that's one of my favorite old shows is All in the Family. I mean, that show by Norman Lear, I mean, they would just go places that were just like, even for its time in the 70s, were just like, really skating on the edge of society and what could or could not be said, but they would go there. And in going there, like the society could look at itself and laugh, but also be like, that's interesting. Our society kind of believes in that norm and it's like so awful. So in actually being able to articulate certain things that Archie would articulate on our show and mainly him, the society that was so popular could look at itself and hear it and reflect. I think when it's so PC and everyone's so afraid, there's no insight that comes. So I also think times are too serious today. And I agree, some of these funny stories and situations, people tell these stories, they really can bond people. Like you were talking about with the birds and everything. It can be embarrassing and odd, but it makes people feel close to one another. And I think that's why when you see old friends after a long period of time, you remember that one incident, like the bird incident or anything. And it's like, those were the good old days. And it's just so fun, right? It's like, again, not so serious. And just you feel closer to people when you share those sort of embarrassing, odd, strange, funny times with each other. And yes, April 1st, April Fool's Day. I know a lot of people born on April Fool's Day, which I think is really interesting. But yes, a new month is dawning. Here we are. I'm always so happy to say goodbye to March. As I might have mentioned before, I absolutely hate March. It's such a long, slow bridge between winter and spring. The weather's so unpredictable. It just feels like it hangs on forever. And I feel bad saying this because I have so many friends born in the month of March. Sometimes Easter even falls in March, but I just don't like March. So I am always really happy to see April Fool's Day come around. Yeah, it's always a good moment. You were asking about RK. He plays pranks with his Malaysian family. I noticed this early on when we were going to meet his family. Well, I was going to meet his family for the first time. Would call a cousin and pretend like he was calling from some, chop shop that was like delivering food, and he'd have a funny voice, and people would think like they had ordered food and he was calling to prank them. He did all sorts of things like that, and he still does with his Malaysian family. I don't know what it is about him and those cousins, or even I'll do it with aunts on that side.
and just make funny. Oh no, that side really comes out on him when he's with them. So yeah, he does. I mean, he is a comedian and likes comedy and, putting sets together of jokes, a lot of times observational, looking at something from the inside out, kind of is what he likes to do. I mean, he's also very serious, right? And I think I get mainly the serious part of him. He doesn't really prank me. Now I wish he did. I don't like the comedy, but it would be fun to be pranked. I think it is kind of fun. I don't really prank him either. I have to say, I do like sarcasm. I really like to be sarcastic. And sometimes I know, I mean, I hate to admit this, but I have crossed lines and I think I have hurt people being sarcastic. I think I will just go there and say outlandish things to people. And sometimes I haven't meant to hurt people, but I think it actually has hurt people. I mean, if people aren't sarcastic or get in on the act like that, it can be very hurtful. So I've had to scale that back, but sometimes it still comes out and I'll just be sarcastic and just say things as I say them. Or even if I'm not sarcastic, I'm just saying things as I see them. And I think I can be hurtful. So I just was kind of reflecting on that about those lines that get crossed. I heard you talk about pranking some friends in California, I think, and you didn't tell me what he did to them, but it sounds like he hurt them in some way. And I'm kind of really curious, I have to say. I know you're probably not going to tell me, but you really got me quite curious about that one. But yeah, I can see how people, if it's not the right person or they got the wrong kind of ideas about things, like, yeah, it can be very, very, very hurtful. I love that your mom played April Fool's jokes. Who knew? I had no idea that she did that, but I think it's really sweet and fun, and it shows your mother's lively kind of sense of humor and, yeah, simple things, but still, really fun. Or you could do something for your girls on April Fool's Day today. That would be super fun, but also just, innocent. I don't really play jokes on April Fool Day. Yeah, I don't really do that these days, but I have joked on things. There was a really great store in Seattle called Archie McPhee's, and it had the best kind of jokester stuff. So I would always play kind of funny pranks with these things you could buy there at Christmas time. And one of the best things I ever did was I pranked my mother, who loves to pay the lottery because she wants her ship to come in. So these lotto tickets that I bought at Archie McPhee's were all designed to be a winner, right? They're not real lotto tickets, but when the person plays the game, they won $5,000. It was the cruelest prank ever to play on her because she did it. And then I could hear her out in the kitchen. We were in the family room. She getting more and more excited, yeah, hey, 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 Muffy, I think, and then she ran in. She never ran. She starts crying and everything with glee. And we're just we had to tell her that they were fake lotto tickets from Archie McPhee's. And she was so angry. But for me, it was a really, really good prank. It's really funny when somebody has a particular thing like that they have so many hopes and dreams on, and then you prank them around it. It's golden. I'll always remember that as golden. She hated me for that, though, I have to say. Yeah, I would never suspect of doing any pranks given his personality. But then he did surprise me at my own Halloween party with his magic trick. And I really saw that night how he has such a creative, fun side, although it's hidden. And I was wondering, did the people ever figure out at the office that it was from him? I think that's amazing that he did that with those little tchotchkes and people really had a buzz on. And now that I kind of understand, I can see that would have been really you would never guess, because I would never guess he would do a magic trick or be that. And there's a very creative, playful, fun side of him that I got to see. And I just think that his office got to see that as well, and how great. Yes, I was thinking about, and this is not really a prank, but you asked about being a kid and did we do stuff. You were talking about egging houses and, toilet papering houses. I never really did that. But people did in our neighborhood for sure, especially around Halloween. But we were so stupid, me and my fellow eighth graders. I think I was mentioning this to you on a different voice memo about how, like, being in middle school, we were just really kind of stupid and did stupid stuff. So one of the stupid things we did, which I think is kind of prank-ish, but I don't think it was in the spirit of a prank. I don't think consciously it was in the spirit of a prank, although unconsciously I think we were. So I went to a Catholic school, grade school. So it was, elementary school. So first grade through eighth grade, and we were eighth graders. And the head nun, her name was Sister Claire, announced to us that the bishop was coming and each grade was going to do something special for the bishop and, to celebrate him coming to celebrate mass with us and be with us for the day. So, of course, eighth grade is the top grade. She was put a lot on us to do something really special for him. So I think I mentioned recently that in eighth grade, I was a part of a group called the Department of the Dum-Dums, and I was secretary to the VP of the Department of the Dum-Dums. So the Department of the Dum-Dums staff got together and we said, how can we honor the bishop? Okay, we're going to do a play. We're going to write our own play to honor him and perform the play when he's here. Well, you know what the play was about that we came up with? It was about a piece of gum and a jogger walking by and losing the piece of gum. And then what happens to that piece of gum when the jogger loses it? So one of us goes by and farts on it. One of us puts it underneath the bench. One of us plays a dog who pees on it. One of us plays another dog that poops on it. All sorts of things happen to the gum. We all had a role of doing something to this gum. And then later on, the jogger comes back and says, oh, there's my gum, and puts it back in their mouth. This is the play we performed for the bishop of the diocese that year in eighth grade, the Department of the Dum-Dums. I still can't believe how stupid we were. Sister Claire was so unhappy with the eighth graders, our group that did this, that she came in and she was like, she was always a stern woman, but she was screaming at us. She made us all stand and she said, I'm going to call your parents tonight and tell them what you did and how you shamed us and going to punish you. I don't even know what we did. I think we might have had detention. I don't know what we ended up doing, but I'll never forget being at home that night and at dinner. She hadn't called my mother yet. I was waiting for the phone to ring. Back then, your phone was in the house, it's just like my heart was like pounding. And then I said, hey, Mom, there's going to be this phone call from Sister. Like, why would she call me? And I'm like, then I told her the story. And my parents were both just looking at me like, what in the world were you thinking that you would put a play on like that for the bishop of the diocese? And I guess when I was recounting it, and I'm recounting it to you right now, I realized if that was really stupid. But we kind of pranked the bishop. I mean, I think the bishop, I don't even know what his face, I can't remember what his reaction was. But, I think we were all like unhappy to be studying religion at a Catholic school at eighth grade, or 13-year-olds. So we were smart Alex, and certainly the Department of the Dum-Dums knew it. And what sounded like a good idea was not really a good idea. The other thing that I did in middle school, which was kind of prankish, but was actually like cruel. You remember how people would fall back, when you're supposed to catch your friend? Like the trust game, like, oh, I'll fall back and you'll catch me. Well, I had a friend, quote unquote. She was a very good friend. But when I first moved to this little town in Pennsylvania, she was a person who hated me and was like, I'm going to beat you up at the bus stop. And I had to go to the bus stop and face it because back then in the 70s or early 80s, parents didn't like protect their kids and like say, you shouldn't be, threatening to beat up my child. My parents were like, go to the bus stop and defend yourself. You got to learn how to do that at some point in life. So, I did, and she didn't beat me up, but she did scare me to death. So one time, like years later, maybe this wasn't eighth grade, maybe this was seventh grade. Yeah, seventh or eighth grade. We were playing the trust game, and she totally trusted me and fell back, and I just let her fall on the concrete. That was so bad. That was so bad because she trusted me so much, and she really hurt herself because it was solid concrete that she just fell onto and whacked her head. Sadistic, right? Like really bad. Like I wouldn't say it was a prank, but it was like, I realized like sometimes I can go too far and I can hurt people with things I say and things I do, even when I don't really know I am doing that.
Oh my God, Muffy, your story about the Department of Dum-Dums and the play about the gum to honor the archdiocese or bishop. I'm not Catholic, so I don't really know the terminology very well, but that was hysterical. I started laughing when he said that somebody farted on the gum, somebody peed on the gum. You're saying, like, how stupid was that? But, like, you were the Department of Dum-Dums, right? So it's so appropriate. Like, kids are kids, and it probably did make him laugh? I thought that was so funny. It is funny how the kids think, how kids think up these, like, just random things that make no sense whatsoever, but they're funny. Yeah, I do like April Fool's Day. I've never pranked my girls. I'm not a prankster. I have a really hard time. Like I don't naturally like lean in that direction. And so I've always kind of like wanted to do it, but then I never have. So I think I am going to do it this year. Maybe it'll be something simple. I just Googled something about like, April Fool's jokes on your kids. And so I think I have a couple of ideas. I am going to play a prank on A, and it was your idea. You gave me that very nice coffee maker that also makes hot chocolate and tea and other things. Well, I don't know how many other things. I haven't used it yet. And it wasn't a cheap purchase, right? And so you suggested that I should prank A on April Fool's Day and pull it out and say, oh, look, I just bought this, like I'm going to buy whatever I want and see what his expression is. He may know how much it costs because at Christmas, one of my daughters was asking like what I wanted. And I said, well, I really like this coffee maker, but it's like $500. I looked it up at the most current one. And I'm like, or, this pillow for the bed, which is like only 100. I don't know if you would remember that or not, but I will let you know how that turns out. I too miss the non-PC days. I really do. I agree. Everything is so politically correct. I mean, yeah, we are Gen X and we are not politically correct. That has gotten me into trouble. Not intentionally, but unintentionally as well as A. And so it's so hard. I remember I was in a mom's group and there was a woman who was Indian and the kids were playing. And then like, I think my kid gave another kid a toy and then took it back. And I was like, oh, don't be an Indian giver. And as soon as I said that, I was like, oh my God. And I just like had to backpedal. And I know you're part Indian, so I apologize. But like, those are the terms that we grew up with. And so it just kind of fell out of my mouth. I do think it's kind of funny. We have new neighbors moving in, as you know. And my next door neighbor, who is not the new neighbor, she's Pakistani and her husband is white, Irish, whatever, looking from Pittsburgh. And she was like, oh, she's like, I hear the new neighbors moving in are Arab. And I was like, okay, I don't know what to do with that because I'm trying to be PC. Now the joke is I'm like, oh, my neighbors, the Arabs. It's so not politically correct, but it's funny. Look, I just laughed. So yeah, I get your fascination and enjoyment out of watching All in the Family. Like, because it's so not politically correct, but it's funny. And like, gosh, we have to laugh at ourselves, right? Like, I mean, I really love the show, The Bob Newhart Show. I find him as a comedian. I mean, he recently passed away, but as a comedian, I just loved his deadpan voice and the way that he said things. But like a lot of his characters on the show were like pretty un-PC. So, the stories, these funny stories, they are a bond. With friends and people you've known a long time, and they're funny. I mean, the bird thing, I have a couple of other ones. Back in college, I guess I must have been going from the student union up to my poli-sci class, and I got into my class, and I had a couple of friends, A and S, and they were like, Habs, your dress is tucked into your tights. So I was like, oh no. And they're like, did you walk all the way up here? I must have walked all the way up there with my butt hanging out. So, again, I'm laughing at myself. Another time, I was like in a sorority thing. It was some pinning or something, and we all had candles. And I was like, oh, I got to go to the bathroom. So I went into the bathroom, and I don't sit on toilet seats that aren't my own. I know that sounds weird, but I don't. Um, Maybe TMI. So I'm like leaning over the toilet. Granted, I'm living in this house, so it is kind of mine, but I don't sit on the toilet. I'm leaning over and I'm going to the bathroom. And all of a sudden, I hear this singe. Like I lit my hair on fire. And like, then you know how like burnt hair smells really bad. And so then all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh. And so I'm patting my head and trying to get out the flames. I was fine, but oh my God, the hair smell was terrible. So like, I'm sure all of my sorority sisters remember that ridiculous story as well. I know a lot of people born in April. I have two friends that have the name April or Avril, but I don't know if they were born in April 1st. I know a few people born in April. I also know a fair amount of people born in March and people that are really close. And I also feel bad for not liking March because these are like my good friends and family members. So, I do like sarcasm. I just don't get it quickly enough. Like it kind of escapes me. So the punchline, like I have to double back and then it's just uncomfortable, because I'm like, oh yeah. And then the joke's on me, right? Really? Because I didn't get it. So I don't have a quick wit. I might have a spontaneous wit, but not a quick wit. I don't know what that says about me. But I did have this boss, who I don't like now for what he did to me, but he was from Australia and he had a very sarcastic wit and it would just come under. And it was like he would do something or say something and then I wouldn't get it right away. And then I would. And I'm like, oh, and then it was so unnerving. I hated it. I really did. Um, No, the people from A's office never figured out who it was. To this day, they don't know, which is like hysterical, right? They're probably not thinking about it, but no, it was never uncovered. So A became the mystery man or mystery jokester. And yeah, it is kind of like my mom did have a little impishness about her, and a lively sense of humor. Simple, but it was there. So I don't know that I'm really a jokester or prankster per se, but I do kind of play the role of just being like a dumb blonde. That's probably another non-PC term that we should be using, but it's the term that the Gen X-ers grew up with. And so I'm really good at playing Chrissy Snow. And that was my nickname in college in my sorority, but it really served me well. I remember like everybody, like when we had recruitment time and you would have like an open house and like new girls would come through the house and you would have to meet them. And everybody was like organized in a certain room and had a certain role. And then they had to say certain things. Well, nobody ever gave me any responsibilities because they just thought of me as Chrissy Snow. So I had no responsibility. I could roam from room to room. I wasn't stuck anywhere. And I did what I wanted and I could get away with it. So, like, I totally use that to my advantage. Deep down, I don't think I'm a Chrissy Snow, but I have that, like, personality. It's part of my persona, I guess. And I play it up when I need to. Nobody in my work situations would ever know that, but yeah, I still like to have fun and, it being silly and just, kind of being pretending to be ignorant of things. It helps me. It's kind of like saying to my sorority sisters, haha, April Fools. I was just playing along with y'all.
Hey, Habs, it's Muffy. Thanks for answering my question on if anyone ever figured out it was A who was leaving the Chotskys. I can't believe no one really ever figured that out, and it's still a mystery today. That's crazy, but that's crazy good. He's a crazy good prankster, and I can see that about him. So it was really cool. that he did that and got away with it. And no one still knows to this day. I think that's amazing. Yes, it's funny about you and the persona of Chrissy Snow. And, Chrissy Snow was like, yeah, the greatest like dumb blonde on TV on Three's Company. But I always thought of Suzanne Summers, who was a blonde, beautiful woman in life, who I think people thought of her as kind of a Chrissy Snow persona because of her blonde hair. But she was really the smartest one in the room, right? Like it is like a persona that people put on and can use that really hides the smarts of somebody. And I think you're really, really smart and perceptive. And that can kind of get hidden a little bit by the Chrissy Snow persona that you use to your advantage. I wish I could say that I have a Chrissy Snow persona. Unfortunately, I think I'm not blonde. I'm just dumb. I've always been just kind of like a little out of it. Take, for instance, when I was like a junior in high school and maybe we were seniors actually. It was like AP history, advanced placement. And they're talking about the settling of Mississippi being a state or something. And I blurted out, isn't Mississippi a river? Everyone's looking at me. They're like, it's a state. And I'm like, oh my God, is it? Then they got to pull out the map and show me. I'm like, oh my God, I thought it was just a river. Like, now that's a Chrissy Snow moment, but like not a persona, like reality. And I think I was always like a little out of it. I was always just a little like not quite on the same page as everybody else. Let's just say that. I still think to this day that I'm not on the same page as everybody else. I'm like, oh, that actually happened. I think I'm ditzy. I think I don't know, gullible, but just sort of maybe innocent or something. Like I just blurt out, I'm not ashamed of it. I work with people who always have to look smart and like keep a persona like that. I don't care what I look like. I mean, this is my truth, but the truth can be quite ditzy. But then again, I think that's part of the freedom of not having to be so correct and perfect and just allowing for self to just be out there in the world and like have people interact with it no matter what they think. But that always went down. Like if I were to go back to my girlfriends in high school, they will remember that moment when I was just like, I thought Mississippi was just a river. It's a state. And I think that the teacher, I guess, who was just high school, was just like, come on. I was like, sorry. But I mean, I did learn the 50 states. Where was my head? Why did I think that was just a river? Anyway, I am so super stoked for your pranking that I gave you, that you're actually take that up. I think that's hysterical. I cannot wait to hear if you pull it off and he doesn't cotton on, like what his reaction is. I think that's just going to be amazing. And I'm also curious what you will do to prank your girls. I mean, I also started looking up pranking RK because now I'm in the spirit of it. But all these pranks that they have for husbands on April Fools, they just don't appeal to me that much. I don't know. There was like a listing of like 49 pranks you can prank on your husband, but I think when they're just kind of like random or general, they're not like as good as like something specific. Like that idea I gave you for A is so specific to him and his concerns and like you and how you are in the world with stuff. It's like really matches him. It's just like the lotto ticket really, matched my mother. And like I think those pranks, those personal pranks, really, really hit in a way that's just golden. And these other ones that are like, oh, deflate their tire, or, I don't know, there was a whole bunch of different things. I was just like, make a mock call and make him pick up takeout. It's under a different name, and it's this funny name you gave him. I don't know. They just seem kind of stupid to me. So I don't know if I have a good one that's actually particular to RK. If it's not, I won't do any. But I certainly like kind of want to because it's like fun, right? It's really, really fun. I think it's easier to do those general pranks for kids actually, because there is a more gullibleness or innocence and it doesn't have to be so specific. But I think with adults, it really hits when it's personal to them. So that's just how I feel about it. Yes, and I think people are just way too politically correct. I think that's part of the problem in our society right now. Everything is just so buttoned up and like it's just too much. I mean, I feel stifled by it actually. It's funny that you bring up the topic of neighbors and giving a name to neighbors that's not politically correct. You didn't give it, but somebody else did. But I'm doing a series owning 2 homes in Seattle where I used to live and talking about my neighbors because the neighbors will make and break you. And I had really funny names. I have one group I called the purple people eaters because they painted the house purple and they sort of like were people eaters. So I called them the purple people eaters. And then the other one at the other house, they had their color of their house was like an electric green, like a really bright green. So remember that show Electric Company? I call them the Electric Company. Isn't that funny? I mean, I'm not that politically correct. I'm like, and I refer to them on these videos as Electric Company or purple people eaters. Also, I live next to like a greedy developer. And he was, so like, I'm not necessarily about naming neighbors politically correct. I just want to name them as I see them and as I experience them. And so, I think part of what we're seeing in society right now is a backlash to everything being so politically correct. And I mean, I respect everybody. I have regard for everybody. And I also think certain things are just funny. Again, All in the Family, only in that sarcastic, very not politically correct show could America laugh at itself and see its foibles and ways of thinking and grapple with it. If we're always like striving for perfection and not, offending anybody, what are we grappling with? What are we thinking about, right? What are we, how are we working it out with the other? If we don't allow it to work out on the surface, because everything has to be PC, it gets worked out in other ways, but much deeper undercurrent ways that maybe not so good. So yeah, I'm really kind of like over the PC-ness. I don't think I was ever into the PC-ness. And I think that is just my generation. I mean, Gen X we were not politically correct kids at all. And I think, yeah, it has come back to bite us individually as we've interacted with people, as we've become adults in this current world, for sure. I mean, I grew up in a time, you did too, but you remember when like safety belts started being used in cars? And like everybody, it's the law today and everyone has to have their safety belt on and all this stuff, right? But truth be told, when safety belts came out, I asked my mother, I'm like, well, do I need to put this on? And she's like, meh. I was like, great. So like it was a decision. It wasn't a law. You could choose to like safeguard your kids by putting it on. And she was like, no, I don't want to wear one. You're not going to have to wear one. You just didn't, all the, you've had 2 kids, all the stuff to keep kids safe in cars and the whole 9 and, never put a baby in the front seat or a kid under the age of 2. We're all like, I think my mother used to just lay us on the passenger seat as a baby and go to the grocery store, right? With no safety belt, not the baby's not in anything. That's how it was. I mean, it's hard to believe, right? I also think it's funny just thinking about all these things that are like safety for kids today. But the playgrounds, right? They all have that like softness now when kids fall. No one's going to fall too hard or hurt those. Whereas like when we played on a playground, it was like straight cement, baby. If you fell off those monkey bars, you crack your head. Not only would you crack your head, but your parents would be like, it's your fault for cracking your head. Why'd you crack your head? Now I have to go to the hospital and do all this with my time. What were you thinking, kid? So politically. No wonder we're like the most politically incorrect generation living today. Gen X. Happy April Fool's Day, Habs.
Thanks for tuning in to Girls Who Gab with Habs and Muffy this week. We discussed all things April Fools, pranking, sarcasm, and being part of the greatest politically incorrect generation there is, Gen X. Do you prank people? For more, please tune into Girls Who Gab with Habs and Muffy on Instagram. Till next time, when we discuss our greatest fears.